What's going on, guys? Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Garrison Roy, and today we're going to have a very awesome full-length interview. It's going to be in the zone of training, but if you're new to the podcast, we do have several different segments, right? So we have rants where I kind of go on, maybe discuss some hot topics within the game or just overall performance in athletics, or maybe something in the zone. Maybe there's the mental minutes, right? So it's a lot of things, there's little nuggets that we get from not just baseball, but from all different various sports, the quick little mental game hacks to help elevate your performance and keep you in the zone. And then also deep dive educational explorations. Those are going to be maybe diving into some research papers or looking a little bit deeper into things and finding what helps you stay in your zone of either training, mentally in the zone, or maybe a coach and you want to specifically hone in on one specific side, which is what we're going to do today with Stephen Webster. He's the CEO of ASENSEI. What's going on, Stephen?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm so glad that we connected. And to be honest, I was like, okay, did some research. I'm like, all right, I kind of get what's going on. Then we had our preliminary call, and I was like, wait, yeah, no, this goes way deeper than I thought. So go ahead and share with the audience a little bit of you know, how you guys are within, just the fitness uh, background, and then how A Sensei has kind of developed into what it is now.
Yeah, I mean, quick background on the team. I mean, we've all got pretty similar stories that we're all in tech, hardware, software, AI. We've all kind of came through the ranks as contenders to competitors to captains to coaches in our sports. There's a disproportionate number of black belts in the company. I'm a martial
Interesting.
artist.
Okay.
Judo, jiu-jitsu, karate. I've got a fourth degree and two second degree black belts. So that's where my passion for coaching and training comes from.
That's awesome.
Um, in the zone, I mean, martial arts is nothing more that,
Being
that's
locked in. Yeah.
action. One of my CTO is a martial artist. That's how I met him. He's a sixth degree black belt in karate. So, we've got this deep passion for coaching. I think all of us in our own athletic careers would all say that we're better entrepreneurs not because of our tech background or our business background, but because of our sports background, like how we build teams, how we build companies, how we take risk, how we believe in ourselves that we can win, how you stay in the zone, right? How you
That's
kind
it. And just having that mental fortitude and tenacity to
of
stick through it, right? I'm
trusting
sure
you up to meet
in
the
the
challenge.
tech world, right? Or even in like obviously in Silicon Valley, like there's all these startups and stuff, right? So it's like, hey, you got to kind of push through the suck a little bit on these,
I
right?
know you're going to win, right? Or you know that you've got a chance. So that's the background of the team. But listen, the problem we set out to solve is a problem we all knew as coaches and we all knew as athletes, and that's coaching sport or coaching fitness or coaching any physical activity, physical therapy is another good example. It's really hard unless there's somebody there watching. So every other industry, every other, whether it's, banking or travel or retail, they've all been able to go digital. And when they go digital, we all get access to more choice and we all, and then on the other side, you get access to a bigger audience. So wouldn't that be awesome for coaching? If you could get access to, if I could have access to more coaches as an athlete or as a coach, if I could get access to more people to coach, that felt like a problem that we really wanted to solve. But we needed eyes on the athlete, right? And so let
Hmm.
me tell you about ASENSEI in kind of three stages. So we do three things, and we're an ingredient technology in other technology companies' products. So think Intel or Dolby or Nvidia's the cool one now. We're the
Great
we're the
analogies for that. Love it. Yeah, that's good.
We're like speech recognition for movement. Okay. So we all familiar with speech recognition. We can, interact with our devices now just by naturally speaking and getting
Hmm.
spoken back to. We do the same for movement and we do three things. The first is motion capture. The second is movement recognition. And the third is coaching intelligence. So really quickly, I'll unpack those. Motion capture. We do three things in motion capture. We capture the athlete, so we know what your skeleton, just with the camera on your smartphone, like you can just, walk down to the field, stick your camera up against a Gatorade bottle, and now we know what your skeleton is doing, hundreds of times a second. Um, We also can scan the room that you're in or the space that you're in. So you're not just this disembodied floating skeleton in space. We know if you're on the ground, we know if you're jumping in the air. Did you move left? Did you move right? Did you move forward? Did you move back? So that's hard. And we do that with no fancy hardware, no Microsoft Kinect, just with your smartphone. And then the third thing we do is actually equipment recognition. So we can also train the camera to spot the equipment that you're using. An example would be power block dumbbells. We can spot that you pick them up, and we've turned the smartphone into a scale. We know how heavy the load you're carrying, or we can spot lines on a field, or plates on a field, or balls in the air. So we've got this really good picture of the athlete and where they are and what they're doing. The next part, the movement recognition, that's our secret sauce. That's we can train a sensei to understand any human movement, no matter how quick or complex or long it is. That might be, we do lots of stuff in strength training, right? So any strength training exercise you can imagine with a dumbbell, a kettlebell, your TRX suspension trainer, like we've got it. We know how to recognize it. Or it might be a baseball pitch, it might be a baseball swing, it might be a
Sure.
forehand turn. It takes us like an hour to 5 or 6 hours to train any movement a sensei's never seen before. So super fast.
Well, there's a lot
Um,
of volume for that to, spit at videos and stuff and make
yeah, yeah.
it very fast. Yeah.
We've done that before for baseball, actually, where we'll just watch tape and we'll be like, that was a pitch. So now we can annotate the tape. Um, the next thing we do with movement recognition is like once we know what you're doing, we're able to assess how well you're doing it, tell you what you're doing well, and tell you what you're not doing so well yet, and what you need to do about that. So that becomes the underlying capability to start saying like, I can coach you now. But the really hard thing about coaching is, and listen, we've all seen all the gadgets for baseball and golf and everything else where look at all the charts and the graphs and the skeletons and the 3D animations. And a lot of us have the same reaction, so what, now what? Like, what am I going to do with all of this data? So coaching intelligence is let's us do the job of taking all of that data and just turning it into exactly what the coach would have said were they in the room, which might be as simple as, great, but open your hip a little later the next time. Where did
Sure.
that come from, right? But that was the cue you needed. That was the thing. So coaching intelligence is how we power the digital experience. So you're hearing the voice of a coach, but they're not actually there. What they're saying is based on their understanding of the movement you're doing and how well you're doing it, based on the motion capture from the phone. So you can imagine, like anybody that plays any sport other than baseball is probably sitting here right now, that would be great for this. That would be great for that. And so anytime there's human movement involved, we can now coach it digitally at scale.
That's awesome. Really, really cool how you kind of broke that down into the three things because then that opens up a wide range of more questions for me.
Awesome.
Love it. But obviously, a lot of people can be a little skeptical with some of it, but it's like, hey, it's just basically machine learning in essence, right? It's not,
Sort
yeah.
of, because there is a skepticism. And listen, I'll say it again. We're all coaches. We celebrate coaching
Mhm.
and we want to scale coaching. We don't want to replace coaches with some soulless machine that thinks it knows better than us. Okay.
Right,
So
exactly.
yeah, so machine learning would be the idea of I'm just going to feed a machine lots and lots of videos of somebody doing something, and eventually the machine will figure out for itself. So when it sees somebody that it hasn't seen before do it, it'll be like, that's a squat, or that's a pitch, or that's a roundhouse kick. We take a different approach. We're teaching the machine the biomechanics of the movement based on an actual coach telling us this is how I coach. And baseball is a great example of, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of religious debates happening in bars
Oh,
between
sure.
coaches, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Karate is the same. Should the heel be on the floor or off the floor when you punch? I think it should be off the floor, and my CTO is wrong, and he thinks it should be on the floor.
And
So
maybe they're both right. And they're like,
or
hey,
maybe they're both around under different circumstances, or
exactly.
maybe beginners one way, and then once somebody's like nailed some more fundamentals, you move to another way. And so we call that a coaching strategy. So
Mhm.
it's not machine learning per se; it's an expert system that we give a coaching strategy, and then it can just follow that strategy on our behalf. So
I like that. So, for example, obviously baseball has a wide range of levels of players, same with karate or any other thing, right? Like you have your beginners, your white belts, or like
yeah,
in this case, like youth athletes. right? They're going to be coached and have that totally different on those concepts compared to maybe a professional or college player, right?
Exactly.
Can you interchange or know like when, or maybe that's just part of the whole analysis of, maybe they're entering some of their data and stuff, and then that's like gravitates towards, hey, beginner, boom, this is kind of where you're going to start. And then
No,
over time you go to that, or just
we
kind of,
do it. So it's funny you mentioned white belt to black belt. That's literally, if you were to look at the code of how ASENSEI works,
Mhm.
that concept of pedagogy and syllabus and white belt to black belt is
Yeah.
in there. Because that's, I've written a lot of coaching syllabuses in my time. When I coach, so I coached University of Edinburgh for over a decade. I coached it to 10 national championship wins. And so I was always kind of refining my syllabus, like what was I teaching at white belt? What was I teaching at brown belt? What was the black
Mhm.
belt syllabus? And always thinking about how can I layer skill. That was the goal, right? It's like, everything's foundational and then build, 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 black belt. And so baked into the way a sensei works is for any movement, we have what's called the lowest common denominator of the movement. So again, cricket more than baseball over here, right? I've got
Oh, that's
the
fine.
I'll
Similar.
use baseball as an example. I'll bet when you give me two expert pitch coaches, and they probably got very different philosophies, very different ideas but I'll bet give them a beginner that's never thrown a ball before, and there's just some fundamentals that are the same. It's not until you start to go higher up the
Yeah,
skill level that you start to have your differing points of view on what you should coach next or how you should coach next. So
absolutely.
that bottom layer we call the lowest common denominator of the movement. It's the soul of the movement. It's
Yeah.
like
It's and more of a I guess for my terms of like what I'm kind of getting into is the attractor state of certain things, right? Like everybody's going to get into that. Or
I like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The fundamental archetype of the movement,
Mhm.
right? So we start there and we recognize that. And then essentially has this system of what we call nuances. And a nuance is either as a coach, a positive nuance is something I want to attach to your body, right? It's a skill I want to see I don't want to see you telegraph your punch with your front hand, or I want to see your hip move before turn your hip before you throw your hand, kind of like pitch up,
Sequencing of it. Sure. Yeah.
so the nuances are the details. The positive nuances are the things I want to coach. The negative nuances are the habits or the bad movement patterns that I want to take away by coaching you, right? And
Mm.
so that's essentially, that's all Essentially does, right? Is we just make sure you've got the fundamental lowest common denominator of the movement, and then we layer in the positive nuances. And as coaches, you and I can sit down and have philosophical debates about what order we should teach those things in. But
Sure.
whatever you tell Sensei, that's the order we'll teach in. And when you master a movement, you then move up to a progression of the movement, right? Maybe not for a baseball pitch, but if you're doing squats, you'll maybe progress to a split squat or progress to a pistol squat. So once we've seen you've got consistent technical accomplishment of a movement, we can progress you in that movement. And for engagement and retention, showing people progression is super important. So that's kind of fundamentally built in. It's like, how can we just continually meet you where you are and progress you to where you could be?
Oh, absolutely. And I've talked about this with other coaches before too, is like, hey, we all have these assessment phases of identifying and taking all these markers, but like really your assessment should be when you're on the floor training guys every day, right? Because they're going
Yeah,
to change from day to day. You're never the same person the
right.
next day, right? Or there's always these constantly moving and changing things, right? So how I'm kind of foreseeing this technology is like, hey, if you're able to video yourself every day and see these changes over time, you'll be able to maybe catch some tweaks or, maybe some things that, maybe in your form for whatever lift, let's say a squat, for example, to keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like you start to see, hey, that bar pass moving a little bit more and more forward. Hey, that thing's going to yell at you and be like, hey, don't lean forward as much because that's going to flare up your back, or, all these other little.
No, that's one of the really common implementations of our technology when we meet with customers, irrespective of what fitness modality or sport they're playing. is we like to get we like a kind of crawl, walk, run approach to using our technology. Is like don't try and do the
Mhm.
hardest thing first, because we're coaches and that's how we think. Um, so the crawl approach is like start with what we call a smart warm up. So a smart warm up is how a human warms up. Like if you were coaching me and warming me up, you've probably got a fairly standard warm up that gives me the movement prep I need. But as I'm doing it, you're paying, if you're a good coach, you're paying attention to me, right? And you're like, Stephen's hips look a little tight today, or I'm going to be working on, putting a barbell over his head and his shoulder mobility is not looking great, or he's got poor dorsal position. So you might adjust your movement prep in that warm up based on what you see.
Mhm.
Might adjust the programming that's about to follow based on what you see. Or you might see improvement. It's like, hey, you've got really good flexibility or stability or mobility or balance. So now let's take it up a level. And so the warm ups are really good every single time you practice moment to just check in and to begin to personalize. And so that's a really common solution. We've got it in digital apps, fitness apps that you can download and just use, connected fitness products, mirrors that hang on walls that are watching you through cameras. But we've even got, fitness studios who are, 20, 25 studios where as your practitioner is warming you up, we're not giving the sensei feedback to the member. We're giving it to the coach, right? And so the
Mhm.
coach is like warming you up, and then a sensei is immediately like, Stephen's hip mobility is improved. He's got poor depth in his squat, so maybe you want to work on this ankle mobility and blah blah blah. And so now we call it, how do we turn the coach into a super coach? How do we give them
All
that
right.
sort of
Yeah. Oh
yeah.
yeah. And that kind of gives you a lot more into information and how kind of relating this more of the baseball world and the professional side, right? Like you have all these biomechanical reports that some of these professional teams will get, and they'll see that in live time on the field, and they're like, "Oh, hey, so and so's arm slots down," or all these little indicators. Yeah, you don't want to overwhelm the athlete with that because then it just becomes paralysis by analysis at that point, and
Yeah.
you're very overwhelmed. You're like, "Well, what do I do? Well, how do I change that? Am I gonna get injured? Am I gonna do this?" Right? Like,
And you're
let's
probably a
go down a rabbit hole they don't need.
staff of coaching. You don't have your strength coach, your mobility coach, your pitch coach, or you're kind of, especially in youth sports, you're like dad
Absolutely.
on the field, and so
Yeah.
the opportunity to give that person the information they need. And when you're training a population as well, it's not just one-on-one training, but if you're warming up five or six athletes and they've all just got their app in front of them, doing nothing other than paying attention to them, but relaying to the coach. I used to have that, and I taught a pretty big club at Edinburgh University. At the start of the year, would be like over 100 students in a class. That's a big karate class to
Hmm.
practice safely. It would whittle down through the year, but a pretty big class. But I was lucky enough to have five or six other instructors walking the floor with me, and somebody might come over and be like, "Hey, Stephen, I see the blue belts are making this mistake on their front kicks. Do you want me to go and teach X drill that we do?" I'm like, "Yeah, great, Paul. Go and do that." And so, we can kind of bring that staff of coaches or that kind of knowledge to the coaches that just dedicate their spare time to coaching the
Oh,
youth.
absolutely. Oh, and it's a lot more objective versus subjective
Yeah,
when it comes to that, right? And that's kind of the whole point of where I was getting at with the pro organizations is they look at all these things and then they make decisions based off of that versus, oh, hey, maybe one coach over here doesn't like it because of a philosophical difference. He's like, hey, I don't like the way you leg kick.
right.
Okay, well, is that actually like hindering my performance or like
Doesn't matter. Yeah,
how is this going to matter? And
work back and score. Yeah,
exactly. Or maybe there are some things that they see and they're like, okay, hey, like this might be a little bit of a red flag for a potential injury, or maybe they're using more things more than they have in the past. So it's like, hey, you got to take note of that. Maybe the coaches later on down the line or they're pre-planning their game plan to be like, hey, we don't want this to put them in a bad position. So maybe we give them a deload or a rest
right.
day, right? To or something to kind of integrate into that. And I'm sure even for in the example of strength training, right? Love the squat. So I'm just gonna stick with that, right? Like
Yeah,
the
yeah, it's
pull-ups.
a good base case, right? It's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Regardless of whatever kind you need, right? You need it. But um the bar speed of it, for example, right? Like that could probably be a huge indicator
Yep, let
outside
me
of just the form, you know?
Well, let me tell you about one of our customers. So we have a customer called alterme.com if anyone wants to look them up. It's this beautiful mirror that hangs on the wall, but the mirror is also a screen. So you can see a coach in the mirror and then you can see yourself in the mirror. They have a camera in there. And the underlying concept, and listen, the coaches behind Alter, Paul Winsper, former, coach at Newcastle United, performance coach at Under Armour at Nike. I mean, this is the mirror that Nike should have built, right?
Yeah.
And they've got a phenomenal sports science team behind this product for the general population, and they've done a fantastic job of let's break strength training down into the different archetypes of movement, a push, a pull, a press, a squat, a hinge. For each archetype, let's have several different layers of complexity of movement, a simple squat to, a pistol squat or whatever. And they're using that camera on the mirror and they're using a sensei to do exactly what you're saying is do a progress you, do a regress you. How do you get in the zone? You match challenge with skill, and so if it's too challenging, you get frustrated. If it's not challenging enough, you get bored.
Hmm.
And so that's how they're using biomechanics, but they're also using HRV. You have an HRV strap, and so they'll make a decision every morning. And I love this phrasing, are you going to have a workout or a work in? And if they can see by your HRV that you're just stressed or tired or unwell, it's much more of a meditative kind of, mindfulness type workout that you're getting, or maybe it's a stretching mobility workout. And if your HRV is looking good, it's like, maybe we're going to beast you today, or maybe we'll do that fitness assessment. And so they're really tuning the programming based on this. They call it the hyper personalization, this hyper personalized view of you as an athlete. But this is for everyday athletes. Their customer base is not the elite athlete, it's the
Hmm.
everyday athlete. And I really love that democratization of sports science to the general population so that everybody can kind of get better.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, and it needs to have a lot more availability to be
Yeah,
able to help everyone at least have the chance to get good coaching, right? Like for me, for example, I grew up in a very rural town called Smackover, Arkansas, right? So middle of nowhere, two
right,
hours from the closest mall, 4 hours from the closest major airport, like
right,
very, very out there. So if I don't have that type of coaching, like, some of those type of opportunities will go amiss because I just don't have the resources.
right. I'll give
And
you another example, actually. So another one of our customers, you should totally check them out, is a company called ReadyFit, founded by a former U.S. Navy SEAL, Jamie. And the problem Jamie wants to solve is, I think it's like 1 in 10 Americans have a propensity to even want to serve in the military, but of those 1 in 10, very few meet the standard for basic fitness. So, obesity is a national security problem, right? And so the problem ReadyFit are setting out to solve is how can we help more people prepare for and train for the basic military tests? So you can, and different branches of the military have different tests, right? Like different combines for different sports. And so you can basically say, I want to be US Special Forces, or I want to be Army, or I want to be Navy, and it'll show you this is the test. These are the exercises you need.
yeah,
Let's
here's the
teach you the
requirements.
exercises with the
Wow.
sensei. Let's train you those exercises. But then ultimately, let's adjudicate, because you submit your application, and today you submit a video of yourself doing it to the army. It's like the CrossFit, CrossFit Games, right? Submitting your video of your reps. But now with the Sensei, you're submitting a video. You know when you submit it what the score is, because the Sensei's kind of counted the reps and counted the holds and whatever. And then when the army receive it, they don't have to watch it to know the score. Now, I believe they do watch it, but they'll watch it with a we think this person did 7 pull-ups, held a plank for 30 seconds, and rode 1,000 meters or whatever it is. So this idea of like digital combines and but we'll teach you to train for it. We'll make sure we get you as close to your potential for the moment, and then take the test. So I love what we're doing with ReadyFit. They're launching like it's October, right? That we're recording
Yeah.
this podcast. So they'll be maybe even out by the time this podcast is published. And that's what I see for the future of sport. That's what I see for baseball and for football and for lacrosse is train for your combines or train for scouting or get yourself selected for your
Yeah, well,
sport.
it's a lot more personalized too, right?
Yeah.
Like it's It's like, hey, we're not just going to a gym and doing gym pop exercises. It's
Right,
like,
right,
oh,
right.
we got to get you ready, man, because you got to perform. And that's
Right.
what really matters is your performance. It's not necessarily how much you can, bench press or how good you look in the mirror. It's not about the physique unless, you are a bodybuilder and that's what you're trying to do. Probably totally different set of coaching concepts on that one.
Right. And it's funny when I started the company, my vision was always I would put the voice of the coach in your ear. We actually, when we launched the company, originally we were contemplating bringing out our own earpiece, like a physical earpiece. It would be the ASENSEI earpiece. I think that was back when AirPods had very distinctive branding. It's like everybody knows you're, Apple because they can see your
Yeah.
head. Um, my one of my co-founders is a former electrical engineer with a lot of experience in digital audio, so he talked me out of that idea of having it on your face.
Probably
Um,
fair. Yeah.
but as I describe it, like when I grew up as a kid, I played a lot of different sports, but when I was in my garage taking my punch bag, like I'm imagining Bruce Lee's there watching me, right? When I'm slapping pucks off a piece of plywood into a net in my mum and dad's backyard, I'm imagining, I'm Gretzky. I trained, in the imagination of my heroes in those sports. And so, the vision for Ascensi was always we should be able to put the voice of those coaches in your ear. I should be able to hear Bruce Lee or hear Wayne Gretzky or whoever you're, LeBron or Steph Curry. And I'm sure now with AI technology today, we can train a model of someone's voice and text to speech that voice very, very easily with like 15, 20 minutes, not even of audio. So can't say too much about that right now, but that's the kind of experiences our customers are delivering is the voice of your idols, so that you're not just, training in your backyard, slapping pucks off a piece of plywood into homemade Wayne's World kind of nets that you
Mhm. Right.
batter together at home. That was me. You got the voice of your idols in your ear and encouraging you and pushing you and celebrating your like one more rep, two more reps, great job. And I just can't think of a more exciting training experience than that.
Oh, definitely. Well, and coaches are human, and I can definitely admit there are certain days where I probably wasn't very as enthusiastic. So
Yeah,
maybe the athletes were ready to get after it, and I was just like, all right, yeah, let's go do this. Right.
yeah,
But like if you're able to bring your A game or have a coach that brings their A game every single day, that'll definitely make a huge difference, I think. Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, the kind of circling back on that whole assessment part too, you know, how do you think this could also help maybe other departments, right? So again, kind of using this elusive, right? You have your strength coach, or you have your physio, your PTs, right? Maybe there's just a general health as far as for the heart rate monitors and things like that, right? Like maybe these things that they start to see trends that are happening and that gives them certain indicators like, hey, you need to check in with this guy about this, or hey, this guy's, his knees buckling in a lot more and he has a
Right.
history of knee injuries. Okay, cool. Like maybe that's something that you can kind of branch out to, like, so beyond that, right? Like it's a sensei, but then like where is this information being pushed to, right? Because like we were talking about before, it's definitely going to the coaches, but maybe you have the filtering of that to then go to other departments.
Yeah, let me give you a couple of examples. I wish I could tell you who the teams were, but I'll just speak in the abstract. So one solution we have a customer called In Motion Wellness. They have, I think about 30 assisted stretching facilities. So you go when you meet a practitioner, and it's kind of like PT, but it's preemptive. You're just doing your assisted mobility work, and they have this report that gets generated. So essentially, is watching you at the start of your session, if you like, and then it's that super coach, right? We then deliver to the practitioner. This is a personalized plan for this individual, but we let the practitioner deliver it, so they look good, right? And it's yeah, they'll talk about the solution themselves, but they're crushing it. We deployed a similar solution in partnership with Intel, actually. So Intel had a technology that used multiple cameras to motion capture multiple athletes at once. And so we integrated that motion capture technology with the Sensei. So we were able to basically watch an entire court. And so one of the top college basketball teams they were a test case for Intel. And the use case that we were exploring there was kind of exactly what you described. When we've got a player on the court, coaches maybe not paying and certainly the whole coaching staff are not watching them on the court. Let's say they're doing kind of lateral shuffles, and then whatever. Um, but then on that breaking moment, the moment where they kind of break laterally to then push to go to the other side, like that's a really good moment to be like, how's the ankle doing there? How's the knee doing there? How's their torso position? Are they making compensatory movements because of immobility or instabilities? And so the ASENSEI use case there was don't be talking to the athlete during practice. Don't even be talking to the coach during practice. Just let them do practice, but watch them. And if you see anything, let the physio know, let the strength coach know, let the mobility coach know, let the coaching staff know should that player be, resting and not playing tonight. So, and we took the same solution to an NBA team, and that's a story for another day. But
Yeah, that's
it
awesome.
wasn't our focus to kind of build out a solution for them. But it was a great training ground, if you like, for in a practice environment. So yeah, we definitely see this technology having strong application there as well. But again, I kind of come back to a little bit of our mission and values here, which is like the elite teams have already got access to the $100,000 Vicon systems. Like it's like,
Yeah,
how
they
do we
got the
get this to
Ken
the high
crowd.
school athlete? Every night I'm on the field with my son. He's either playing soccer or he's playing tennis, and I want him. In fact, just on Tuesday night, my son was like 10 minutes early to soccer practice, and one of the other kids was there. And I happened to have a demo on my phone that we're building for a customer. That's an AMRAP challenge. It's just like, as many reps as possible of just doing thrusters. I said, hey guys, come here. I've got an idea to warm up. And I just held my phone up and my son did it and then his buddy did it and they had a score to beat. And like, I probably couldn't get my son to do 20 thrusters in 30 seconds very often. I don't know if that was a score. But just that gamification, right? And that, I've got a score to beat
Yeah.
is super fun. So yeah, democratize this stuff for the more general population that don't have access to, multi-million dollar budgets and all the best
Oh,
equipment.
definitely. Yeah. I mean, you can have all the super fancy bells and whistles, but making it more accessible to everyone is definitely going to help.
Now, if the
Um,
Lakers are watching, I'm happy to work with them, but
sure.
yeah.
No, yeah. Good. Speaking about gamifying, so a little off topic, but I did a previous podcast with Proteus, right?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah, with Sam, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, oh, yep, exactly. And just something as simple as like a shot put with the Proteus. I was able to see those numbers kind of pop up where it had different sounds. And that to
Right.
me was like, okay, hey, there's a different indicator here. So like even just doing that alone helped me kind of stay in the zone, right? Stay locked in the tasks that I was actually doing,
Yeah.
right? Because I was just like, okay, hey, I'm getting this feedback. I'm good. Like, oh, hey, that rep sucked. Yep, I felt that my hip felt weird, or my
Yeah.
foot slipped, or whatever it might be. But you're just like, I feel like you're just so locked in because like, okay, hey, that was a good rep. That was a good
Right.
rep. Oh, that one sucked. That was a good rep. Right. So then like how many quality reps or the quality of the amount of work that you're doing for that day is going towards what you need,
There's
which
a Go on, sorry. Yeah.
no, that's it.
No, there's a bunch of things in there I could unpack. So, as a karate coach, I gotta have you do like 10,000 reverse punches. Like it's not a lot of fun. Just stand there and with your back hand.
Mhm.
But if all I do is have you stand in a line doing them, A, you'll be bored, and B, I'm missing out a lot of the teaching because let's say my goal is to stick you in a competition and have you compete for the university. Being able to throw the punch is one thing, but I need to coach you. How does the referee see it? Like, I don't care if it was the perfect punch that landed if the referee was on the other side. So you got to learn to move so the referee can see you. Or if you're fighting another counter puncher with longer arms, how are you going to get inside their space? How are you going to steal time? So there's so much teaching about the thing. And that to me was gamification. It's like, what are the
Mhm.
little mini scrimmages that I can kind of construct that will allow as a coach, I'm just helping them get the reps in, but I'm gamifying it in some way. Maybe it's let's practice in twos or let's practice in threes or do 2v1, which you would never do in a competition. But
Yeah.
um, you're just trying to think of ways. And we do that digitally as well. We spend a lot of time with our customers of like, what are the experiences you can deliver once a machine can see somebody and count reps and score reps, and it unlocks opportunities to make practice more fun and more engaging. And to your point, to stay in the zone. And the other thing you mentioned, and you're taking me back about 10 years, but when we started the company, I was exploring lots of different sports, like what would be good sports for form coaching. And randomly, like we shot a video for VC fundraising, and in the video team were just like, "Oh, it'd be really cool to have archery in there. That would just look really good on film." I hadn't even thought about archery, right? But they're like, "It just looks really cool on
Yeah.
film." And so we went down to Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, and there's a like I think the oldest archery club in the US maybe is in Golden Gate Park.
No way. That's awesome.
And we met this guy, and and then he started, afterwards, after we'd filmed him, I was like, could I fire that thing? Could you give me a shot? Could you teach me? And so he took me through teaching, and he kind of taught me, for 20 minutes or so. But then one of the things he told me is there's 10, I think it was 10, there's 10 positions that you go through and it's the set 10 positions that take you through. And one of the ways US Archery had explored training was different audio tones for each of the 10 movements, that if you get the sequence and the timing correct, it sounds melodic. Because we all know a good melody when we hear it, right? And we know if it's a little bit off, a little bit too fast, if it was too fast in the middle.
Too
And so
rigid.
first of all, they
Right.
teach the tones, and then slowly you're just, I can't draw a bow, but slowly you just know that you're in all the right positions because you heard the melody. And I loved that. I remember at the time thinking, we've got to do that in ASENSEI, and we haven't done it yet. But I thought it was a great idea, and you just reminded me
No,
of it.
yeah. There's something to that though, right? Like for me, one instance that I can remember whenever I was like in the zone, right? Like everything flowed together, right? So you were talking about like, the
Effortless.
melody
Yeah.
or like just everything kind of clicking. Everybody has their own kind of words for it, but it's the sequencing of how that all unravels and you're not having to really cognitively think of what you're doing. You're just like, I've done this for so many times. It's just like happens,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or hey, like done this swing so many times, boom, it just
Yeah.
happens, right?
And
Because
that's what
we've
makes
been
you
doing that.
train the next time, right? It's like that touching that moment makes you want to endure
Oh, you want to keep doing it? Yeah,
1,000 more
have it
crap
every time.
swings so you can.
Very addictive for
Yeah,
sure.
it's awesome.
But yeah, so like going through those sequences and even just kind of doing that or like having a melody, there's almost in a way when you see someone that does something really, really good, like you see a guy swing on TV, or maybe it's shooting a basket or, insert whatever task you want. It's almost poetic, right? Like you can see just how
Yeah.
fluid every movement is versus like what you were talking about before. It's like, oh, hey, it's like this was off and then this looks very herky jerky or rigid, right? And if you can,
I've watched more grainy black and white footage of like judo masters and jiu-jitsu masters, and there's one judoka, a judo instructor, Mifune Sensei, and this tiny little guy, and it's just, I'll use your word because it applies, it's poetry.
yeah,
He's just sticking the foot out ever so slightly, and it's unbalancing, and it's timing, and it's positioning, and there's a maxim in judo, Sir Yokozenyo, which is like, and we use it in English as well. Minimum effort, maximum effect. It's like, how can you remove waste, and no wasted movement, and just get back to that soul of the movement? And then I'm thinking of a specific moment in a specific VHS tape in my dad's attic somewhere of Mifune Sensei just consistently putting people over his foot with a foot sweep. I'm like, that's just like one day and I'm doing the same foot sweep, and I'm hacking at legs like a lumberjack with an axe, So it's like, how does he do that? And it's just, it's practice makes perfect, right? Or perfect practice makes perfect. So,
all about getting the reps in. And yeah, no, I think that just goes such a long way to even, I talked about this on a previous podcast where if someone's exposed to that very early on in their life, let's say like a Ken Griffey and King Griffey Jr. Obviously, King Griffey Jr. saw his dad do all of these things, so
right.
he has that cognitive brain map of, or that's possible to do. Okay, cool. Let me see if I can do
Right.
that. Boom.
And your mirror neurons have been firing for years. You've been seeing just lots of examples of good, and you start to imagine yourself doing it. And there's fascinating studies there, right? Where just watching somebody, if you look at their brain, they're almost moving the same motor muscles as the person they're watching with so yeah, there's so much to unpack. So
Absolutely. Well, a couple other questions I got for you as far
yeah.
as like, you mentioned Ready Fit, you mentioned In Motion. What are some of the other devices that you're able, I guess, to disclose? I know we can't like fully go into it, but like some of the ones
Yeah.
that, might be pretty applicable for maybe just athlete development in general or could
Yeah,
go
I'll share two
solve
more.
more.
I'll share two more because there's a good chance your audience will have them or use them for their own training. So one is Power Block. So Power
Okay.
Block, 30 plus year old company, been making interchangeable dumbbells. So you stick dumbbell on the floor, stick
Mhm.
a little thing in, pull it back up. Your 15 pounds is now 50 pounds. So one of the additional things we've trained, I kind of touched on this with the three things at the start, is just with the smartphone camera, we can identify that, hey, there's a Power Block Pro 50. We can identify that you picked it up and it's in your hand. And in that moment that it's in your hand, and this is mind blowing, even for me, I don't quite believe the team did this. We can tell whether you're holding a 25 or a 30 or a 35 or a 40 just by the very subtle that we've trained the machine to recognize what it's looking at. And so now we can automatically track not just your reps, we can give you coaching on your form, but we can log the weight that you're doing. And when you've got those three things, when you've got form, and more importantly, the breakdown of form, the setting of fatigue, when you've got reps and you've got loads, all of a sudden now you can get access to the same kind of programming adjustments that an elite athlete would get, but you can get it on your smartphone. So if anyone's weight training, get yourself some power blocks and you'll be training with the Sensei pretty soon. Another customer I'm really excited about, they've just launched their app that is powered by ASENSEI is Vertimax, if you're familiar with Vertimax. So the first iteration of the app is for vertical jumping, because I know they've got stuff for explosive sprinting and you can use it as a cable machine and stuff. But for vertical jump, this be a less digital product, right? You stand on a platform with pulleys and tension cables and you jump under resistance. But I was speaking actually with one of the Vertimax master trainers earlier today, and then I was learning that the way they treat what resistance you use is the same you would treat loads if you're using a power block, right? It's like you have a rep range that you want to be in. You want to hit fatigue in that 6 to 8 reps, and that tells you if you've got too much resistance on or not. So now with Vertical, and going to Verticoach is the name of the app. You can go and download Verticoach, see how high you can fly, right? It's in the App Store and there's a free trial version of it where you can try it. Excuse me. But with Verticoach, you can now we can detect what jump you're doing. So we'll give you a particular, is it hands on hips? Is that standing start? Is that a counter measure? Counter movement jumps, counter measure jump, a counter movement jump where you're swinging your arms. Maybe there's a counter measure jump as well. But so we can tell what jump you did. We can tell if you did it properly, but then we can use the camera on the smartphone to also measure your vertical. Now that might be your center of mass. That might be the lowest point of the floor. That might be how high did you able to get your fingertips. So you can think combine testing now, right? But now what we've done is we've taken this utterly undigital product and made it as good as a $4,000 or $10,000 Vicon valve force plate motion capture system, and it's in your freaking smartphone that you can just
Wild.
set up in your garage, right? So now we can watch your technique, measure your vertical, coach your technique, and show you that you improved your vertical. And we can change your programming and give your coach or give your parent or give yourself the information you need to adjust your reps. And so now we've turned this into like a really cool product for training. So yeah, so just think about it now. You know, over time with the Sensei, the weights that you're using, the Vertimax trainer that you're using, the other, equipment, whether it's digital or not, the apps that you're using, we're working with brands like Chris Hemsworth Center or, experimenting with our technology right now. And all these apps and all these products that you're using, Essence is going to be in there just kind of like really powering this movement recognition and coaching. You're gonna, whether you want to enlist in the military or get spotted by the NFL, you're training for your combine or training for your assessments. You're gonna do that training powered by a sensei. You're gonna be adjudicated by a sensei. And you're going to be recruited or enlisted by a sensei. So we're super excited about all these different constituencies of everyday athletes, high school athletes, tactical athletes, industrial athletes that we get to serve with this technology.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I can definitely see this kind of evolving. So obviously coaching in and of itself, but even how remote training and coaching has evolved over the years just by how technology has evolved. Hey, you
Yeah.
can do a lot more things at scale and know how to make adjustments on the fly without you even being there as a coach, right? So then your expertise is also scaled that way too.
And
So
what I love about Vertimix and love about Powerblock is these are like established brands with loyal fan bases. And so, listen, there's some fantastic apps that you can get for baseball that will, watch you pitch, watch you swing, coach you. But I truly believe that you're going to buy a ball and scan the QR code on the ball, and you're going to use the Wilson, or you're going to use the, Spalding, or you're going to use the Rawlings app, and that digital capability is going to be in their product. And the analogy I'll finish with is, if you think about e-commerce back in the day when e-commerce was happening, if you'd ask people who are going to be the brands of the future, like let's take fashion. Like who's going to be the online fashion brand? Oh, it's going to be Zappos or it's going to be Boo.com in Europe. And
right.
fast forward 20 years, it's Macy's and Kohl's. Those are the two top online fashion retailers. So I'm a big believer that the upstart companies, some of them make it, Amazon, right? Some of them, become brands as bigger, if not bigger, than the legacy brands. But the legacy brands, the ones that don't get blockbustered or BlackBerried or Nokia'd, the legacy brands that embrace digital, and they embrace companies like ASENSEI to accelerate their digital. Those equipment manufacturers, the musty old gloves that you and I just evoke childhood memories as soon as we smell them. That's my hockey gloves, my Coopers. As soon as I smell it, I'm back on the rink playing hockey, and those are the brands I hope are powered by a Sensei as much as the digital new entrants.
It's only a matter of time. You never know. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. Well, Stephen, where can people find out more or if they're looking to kind of reach out or maybe just see who else you do work with and find out a little bit more information? How can they get a hold of you? And obviously, I'll put this in the show notes, but go ahead and let them know.
Yeah, I mean, our website is www.asensei, ASENSEI.ai. I think every company, if you're not embarrassed by your own website, you're spending too much time on it. So yeah, that's our website. Um, my team and I are quite active on LinkedIn. I know not everyone uses LinkedIn, but certainly if you're in the industry, there's a pretty tight community in the sport fitness tech industry. And we're very, I mean, we're pretty prolific on LinkedIn. We like to share a lot of what the team is working on and give people sneaks of what's possible in the state of the art. So don't even bother following a sensei on LinkedIn. I shouldn't say that. My board will be like, "You said what?" Follow a sensei, but follow me. Follow my VP of partnerships, Blake Whitcomb, who former Vicon motion capture, and kinesiologist and sports coach. Because we tend to be the ones that share stuff from the coal face, and so yeah, follow us on LinkedIn. That's the best way to keep up.
Love it. Love it. I'll
Yeah.
be sure to put that in for you
Yeah.
in the show notes. But Stephen, thanks so much for coming on and taking the time to do this. And for those of you listening, stay in the zone.